this on?
Mike,
Dan, is this on?
Can you hear me, Mike?
Can you hear me? Does that mean we're live?
I
can.
I think it means we're live.
So is this it? Is this the first episode?
I mean, it feels like a big first. It does feel like a big first to you, doesn't it?
I think it does. So if that's the case, then I guess this would be the inaugural episode of the brand new Hemmings Hot Rod BBQ. Is that right?
The Hot Rod BBQ. I just love saying it. You know?
It's a great name.
Doesn't it make you happy inside? It makes you feel like we're doing something, like we're hanging out, eating burgers, leaning on cars, right?
Dude, well, you're leaning on a car, right?
I am kind of leaning on a car. Actually.
You've got a great background. I've just got cardboard.
Right. Well, the cardboard works, man. I mean, sometimes we just got to make the magic happen around us by surrounding ourselves with black cardboard.
Well, that's very true. That's very true. So to the outside world, yes, welcome to the first episode of the Hemmings Hot Rod BBQ. My name is Mike Musto, along with
I'm Dan Stoner.
Dan Stoner, who is the Hemmings creative director, pompadour wearing, goatee slinging, hot rod driving,
right?
Mastermind of the carbureted drag car.
Now that's a really good and kind of accurate point of differentiation, Mike, because I would look back at you and say, here's Mike Musto, the director of new media for Hemmings, which is a big deal. The fact that Hemmings has a director of new media is amazing. Your history is long and storied. And one of the things I love about what we look like when, comparing the two of us to each other, it's like my head is sort of an upside down version of your head.
That's true. Dude, if people are watching this and you flip me over, my mouth would just be where Dan's eyes are, and it would be totally normal.
That's right. I've seen drawings. I've seen tattoos like that. Actually,
yeah, man, it's creepy. It's creepy. But so, folks, we wanted you to welcome. This is kind of really cool. This is the first Hemmings Hot Rod BBQ podcast. This is this has been a long time in coming, where Dan and I had wanted to do something like this. We talked about it. Dan, God bless him, came up with the greatest name in the world.
Oh man.
And then we said, okay, well, it is a lot of pressure, but it worked.
Yeah.
And the whole thing is, what do we want to talk about? What is the Hemmings Hot Rod BBQ? So, Dan, do you want to educate the audience first, and then I'll go in with some leftover notes?
I'll take a stab at it. Why not? Right. So we looked around at the podcast world, and we thought, well, what do we want out of a podcast? Right. Because, there is no doubt that this year in particular, I mean, think about it, Mike, when we were actually just ordering equipment for our Hot Rod BBQ podcast, we couldn't even get microphones because they were all sold out.
That's right.
So it means that there's a few people out there doing the same thing, right? So we thought, well, what would we do to make ours a little different? And we thought, what would be great is if we could be the people who brought folks along on the audio version of a barbecue hangout. We hang out with the greatest friends, cars, the people, the movers and the shakers of the world that make this stuff happen. We talk a lot about the SEMA show every year and how many people want to, put the SEMA show on their bucket list when we get to live that stuff every day, right?
Sure.
So why not bring people along, invite them over for a virtual barbecue at our place, hang out with them, crack a few cold ones, eat a couple burgers, and hang around the shop and just kind of like bull S for a while. You know what I mean?
That's very true. And it was interesting when we first came up with the concept, the idea of a barbecue is just that, right? It's that place where everybody comes to hang out. And don't get me wrong, we have grand visions of this thing. We have visions of pulling up to your neighborhood or your local car show, wherever it is in the country, in a big whopping mother of an Airstream,
right?
And taking the barbecue on the road. So that's going to happen. Now, like Dan said, when we first started this thing, we said, okay, well, we need microphones, we need equipment, we need this, that. During the time of COVID, everything was sold out. So it took us a little while to get our stuff, but we got it. We got it.
We got it all under control.
Yeah. I mean, we both look all right. We got cameras. But let's do this. So before we get rolling, Dan, why don't you tell everybody what your background is and how you came to Hemmings, and then we'll go into what is Hemmings. How long have they been around, which is forever.
Right.
And then I'll give you a little background on myself, and then we'll move forward as to the meat and potatoes of the show.
Yeah, that's perfect. So I came on board at Hemmings about 7 years ago, and I came from independent publishing, had a background in big advertising. And, you know, if you know anybody or have come from the advertising world, the grass is always greener, right? So like everybody in advertising is either a frustrated director or a frustrated author. Everyone wants to write the big American novel, and they're in advertising, right? So I actually took the leap and left advertising and started my own first magazine. It's called Garage. I got that published and rolling for a couple of years, sold that to the Jesse James that you've all known and come to love for years and years.
The actual Jesse James.
The actual Jesse James, that's right.
Okay.
Of West Coast Choppers fame. So I sold the magazine to him, worked for him for a couple of years, and then started another magazine called Auto Cult. Got that going before Hemmings came knocking, and I thought, this is too good of an opportunity, right? Because I'd grown up on Hemmings, had a subscription as well as the other, magazines in the world. But that hot rod car magazine, itch was always scratched by Hemmings, because you could look through 600,000 pages of a phone book every month. Right. And scroll through there and buy anything you ever wanted, things you didn't know you needed. I learned how to buy white wall tires from Hemmings Motor back in 1986. So, it was a great call that I got one day when I finally came to work for Hemmings. And the funny part about that was I called my dad up, and I grew up he grew up restoring tractors. I grew up, getting into the hot rod thing. And when I finally got the job at Hemmings, I called my dad and I said, Dad, I got the job at Hemmings. I mean, what do you think? What do you think? And my dad just paused as a typical, Pennsylvania Dutchman would. And he said, well, I guess I can finally tell people after church what you do for a living. So, so
validation.
There's the validation I've been searching for my entire life. Right. So that was great. And once I came on board Hemmings, it started to turn the corner in the publishing world, especially for car publishing and automotive enthusiast publishing, where magazines weren't enough anymore. Right. And we started to have to get into video and digital and websites and online. And we had to figure out what we're going to do about YouTube and what we're going to do about serial television and Saturday morning, how-to shows. What are we going to do about all that stuff? Right. And as I got on board and learned the ropes of Hemmings and learned about what was needed in the world, especially ours, a couple years later, I called you. Right. Yeah. And I said, there's this guy out there, this guy, Mike Musto, with his shows. And what we could use is a good hard shot of Mike Musto in our lives. Right. So that's when I called you up and we got burgers that one day. Remember
that's
that?
True. Yeah.
Yeah.
No. Yeah. And that's very true. So yeah, Dan pinged me and, we started talking about Hemmings and where they wanted to go as far as video and podcasting and things like that.
Right.
And then Dan kind of posed the question and he was just like, so would you ever be interested in maybe coming on full time? And just to give you guys some background. So I come from the media world, right? So I started out as an automotive journalist, which I still do a lot of journalism. Created two shows one called Big Muscle, the other one called The House of Muscle, which were muscle car based shows where we would go and find the greatest cars in the United States and grab their owners and take the cars out for like a big test drive and built up about 70 million views. It's not too shabby, right?
Not shabby at all.
And so when the opportunity presented itself and Hemmings said, would you be interested in coming on full time? I just kind of sat back and I said, this is kind of what my last kind of 12, 15 years in the business doing media, consulting, journalism, all kind of added up to. And now, as opposed to doing 15 things a month for 15 or 18 different clients, I've got one place that I feel at home that I could come in and together with Dan and the rest of the staff at Hemmings, we can really kind of make this into something that, even though it's already great, we could take it to that next level from a media perspective. And what you guys are witnessing is the barbecue, which is the first step in that process.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, you know, to take it back, well, let's say 65 plus years, as Mike indicated a little earlier. If you know Hemmings at all, then it needs no introduction. I mean, Jay Leno has talked about, you know, his gauge of a true gearhead is whether or not they have a subscription to Hemmings. Even Dan Aykroyd on Joe Rogan brings a copy of Hemmings and they start looking through the pages of Hemmings and like, you know, wish listing some stuff, right? But, you know, Ernest Hemmings, the guy who's behind the name, only passed away maybe, I don't know, 3-4 years ago. He was still alive and saw what Hemmings was turning into, I'm guessing, for years and decades and decades. And the story I've always heard, and of course I'll get some of this wrong, and we'll have to have some guests on from Hemmings who've been there for 65,000 years to tell us more about this. But Ernest Hemmings, you know, was out, I think he was in Illinois, if not Iowa. I think it was Illinois. And Hemmings was just literally a stapled together little newsletter of Model T and Model A parts, because after, in 1954, I think is when he started, because after World War II, the idea of classics. Those were classics, right? And the idea of a collector car didn't really exist until, and I will say this is what I always kind of put forth, I would maintain that the idea of a collector car and the collector car industry really didn't become a thing here until Ernest Hemmings started stapling together those little newsletters, right? And sending them out in the mail. And that grew and grew and grew into this like giant marketplace. And now on any given day, 65 plus years later, there's roughly $1 billion worth of stuff being bought, sold, you know, services rendered, real estate bought and sold, all kinds of things happening, auctions, all kinds of stuff. You know, so that's a big deal, right? So, and here we are just throwing a barbecue about it.
Well, that's, I mean, so we started, it was 54, Hemmings began, right? 1954.
Yep.
So, you know, and when you think about things, and again, this is just to give you guys some background on Hemmings and everything else, but you know, we have 3 publications. We've got the Bible, right?
Hemmings Motor News.
Hemmings Motor News, and then Hemmings Muscle Machines. Now, the Bible is just that. That's the Bible of the collector car hobby and the classic car hobby. It's been that way forever. It is this massive publication that you get. It's got everything in it.
It's a
Muscle Machines,
book, right? Like
it is a phone book.
In 2020, there's a phone book of car parts. That's amazing.
And here's the thing. We've got Muscle Machines, which is all muscle cars, and muscle cars, you know, we're talking classics, but then we're also talking modern cars and resto mods and 4x4s and everything else. Right. And then we've got Motor News,
and we've got Classic Car Magazine too.
And we've got classic cars. So what's crazy is that you see all these other publications are closing down titles and they are folding up pages where we keep expanding. So it's crazy. In this time of COVID, our subscriptions have gone up, and it's pretty amazing. So if you get a chance, you know, buy a magazine because they're still fun, and everybody likes to read and flip a page.
Yeah, no one's taking their laptop out to the beach. You're gonna take a copy of People. You're gonna take a copy of Motor News.
That's right.
You know, you'll get lost for an entire weekend out there.
Right.
Yeah.
One of the things is that, you know, when we talk about this, you know, obviously we have our online presence at Hemmings.com, in that we have, and you're going to hear us talk about this as the show progresses, right? Each and every week, we're going to go through the classifieds, of which we have like 25,000 cars online that you could browse through, and vehicles. But then we also have the Hemmings auctions, and the Hemmings auctions is just that. You go, you see a car that you like, give it a bid, buy it, take it home, get into an argument with your spouse because you bought something that they didn't know about.
Right.
And if
turn
you
around
want to sell it
the next day, right?
On Hemmings auctions, why wouldn't you do that? Right. But the cool part is we have an outlet, I think, for every gearhead in everything that they want to sell. And that's whether you've got a boat, a motorcycle, a car, you know, a tractor. If it's mechanized, we want to know about it.
Yeah.
Right. So, and you're going to see every episode, Dan and I are going to choose a vehicle from our classifieds that we're going to post up just because we think it's cool, because honestly, we do look at those quite a lot just to see cars that we talk about and that we like. Speaking of which,
Mike, you even talk about how you at the end of every day, you actually saddle up with the either the magazine or the laptop and just go through listing after listing and just cruise the classifieds, don't you?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think everybody's got their kind of how they decompress at the end of the day, and that's what I do, right? I'll hit online, I'll hit the auctions, and I'll go through just about everything and just see what's out there. Something that may have been there yesterday, or, might not be there today, but something new is on. And, Dan, when I first came on, we started talking about this because yes, we're both car guys, but our tastes are completely different.
Oh, that's true.
So, if you're watching the live cast right now and you could see watching the video behind Dan is that's a 29?
That's a 1930 or 31. It really depends on,
okay.
They're all basically the same. It's a 3031 Ford Model A coupe.
Okay.
Early, and I'll say early hot rod. And when I say early, I mean this thing. I was just saying to some of our producers right before our show, this thing basically created the rat rod movement back in 1980s. This thing was built in like 1986, 87, 88, that era. This is a primered hot rod that you will see across the cover of any magazine on the line, or at any car show, any sort of gallery of car show pics from any car show across the country. But they started with this thing. This thing, when this was built, didn't exist otherwise. So to see something like this, and it's still in the same livery it was back then. So what you're looking at behind me is exactly what was seen on the car show circuit on the West Coast in the mid to late 80s. And it really just was, ground zero and sort of patient zero for an entire movement that we're seeing all kinds of stuff about these days.
So if you go through your collection, right? Because Dan's got a bunch of really fun. You go into Dan's garage and it's like this eclectic mix of just awesomeness. And so go through the collection, just because what I also want people to know is, like, not only do we talk about this stuff, but we truly do live this hobby every day. If we are not talking about it or shooting video on it, we are in our garages wrenching on stuff. So Dan, what do you have in your collection right now?
I will say the biggest difference between my garage and Mike's garage is that you really need to have your inoculations up to date before you walk into my shop. And Mike's you just make sure you wipe your feet, right? So like in my shop, I've got everything from a 65 Howard flat bottom drag boat with a vintage Ford 390 V8 in that thing. I've got a 27 Model T hot rod that's still not built after 15 years. But if you go to Hemmings.com and look for Stoner T, you'll see a whole bunch of stories about that. Then there's like a 37 LaSalle Opera Coupe. There's a 1959 Edsel in there. There's a 74 F350. There's a bunch of like motors and orphaned parts and all kinds of, there's stuff in there that I think there's a family of raccoons living in that place. There's some stuff in there I'm not even aware of. I think there's a family living in that place, by the way, so, but then you walk into Mike's shop and like the lights are on, it's bright inside, you kind of feel warm. I definitely wipe my feet before I walk in.
It's not that clean.
Talk about what you got in your shop, Mike.
So yeah, no, I've got a bunch of stuff. We've been fortunate enough to, over the years, kind of put some stuff together. So I've got a big old black 68 Charger that we've dubbed Mr. Angry. We've had that car for close to 20 years. I've got a 69 Dodge Daytona replica that we call Angrier, which is a matte black thing with a big nose cone and a wing on it. What else? I have a 79 Pontiac Trans Am, a 79 E12 BMW, a 90 Grand Wagoneer.
Don't forget the 4x4 tractor.
I got my Bronco.
Your Bronco.
My daily driven 96 Bronco.
Yeah.
And then I've also got a couple of two-wheelers. I've got an 85 Honda Elite 150 scooter with the pop-up headlight, because it's the same one that Sarah Connor rode in the Terminator, so I had to find one. And I did.
Sarah Connor.
I have a 2001 MZ Bagheera, which is a German bike that I brought over, which is kind of fun. And then I have a 1993 Honda VFR 750 that I tool around on. So
nice.
It sounds like a lot, but most of the stuff isn't worth very much.
Hey man, look, the funny thing about my shop is the only thing that runs is the boat, so you can't even, if I can figure out how to self-propel that thing on its trailer, then I've got a real hot rod.
Right. Exactly. But so that's just it. So just, to let you guys know, we talk about this. Yes, you'll see our writings in the publications and on the website, but we truly do live this every day. And it's not, I'm not going to say there are podcasts out there and there are people out there that are in this industry that are personalities that don't really do this. This is not only our job, but this is the life that we've chosen to lead. And it leads with four wheels. right? Which is very, very cool. So, you know, as far as let's get into some guests. Let's talk about the types of guests we're going to have on the barbecue and why we're going to bring them on. Right. So, Dan, take us through this.
You know, in a lot of ways, you know, the Hot Rod BBQ was first conceived because we thought the best thing we can do if we're going to bring our best friends over to the house for a barbecue, what would be like the ultimate hangout? Well, we've realized pretty quickly that the ultimate hangout would be, what if we could get like the guy who designed the new Challenger? What if we could get your neighbor who actually, like, you know, builds lowriders? What if we could get the guy with the tattoo of the 29 Model A Ford Hot Rod on his forearm? You know, what if we could also get, you know, the fastest guy in NASCAR these days, right? Or the fastest guy in the world? Could we get that guy? Could we get or maybe that's a woman? Maybe it's the fastest woman in the world. You know, maybe we could get, you know, some Germans. I don't know. Could we get some Germans on the phone? Maybe. I don't know. You know, but we thought, I mean, Germans always make for good house guests, right? So what if we could get all these people together, you know, bring them over to our house and throw a barbecue and talk about cars? We would imagine that would be a pretty amazing conversation, right? And those are the kinds of conversations that on your deathbed, on your last, you know, on your last breath, you might think that your molecules, that worthless sack of bones might be worth a little bit more having had some great conversations in your life. Right. So that's what we want to bring. And like Mike said earlier, if we do this correctly, we're going to bring this thing to you. We're going to bring the podcast. We're going to bring the barbecue out to you, out to a car show. And we're going to invite you over. And it's going to be even more amazing when you're there too. So that was the whole idea behind the thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I think, you know, and to Dan's point, yes, we're going to talk about, you know, cars and everything else, but don't be surprised if you all of a sudden tune in and we're talking about fashion. Obviously, we're going to talk about food. So if we have a couple of chefs on board, you will probably see Dan and I munching away on stuff. And if you can't see the video, you'll hear us eating stuff. It might not be that attractive, but that's, you know, that's what'll happen. But yeah, the whole idea is to get a really kind of fun, eclectic guest list. We're not talking about posers here. We're talking about people that are in this industry, that are dedicated to it, that love what they do because of the passion that's in their hearts as opposed to the paycheck. And that's the whole deal. So now with that being said, I think because we've been running now, and just to give you an idea, the podcast is generally going to run for about 45 minutes to maybe an hour and 15 minutes top. So it takes some of your time, but not all of your time. One of the things that we're going to do every episode is, like I mentioned, we're going to pull a car from the classified ads.
From the Hemmings classifieds?
From the Hemmings class. Out of 25,000 cars.
That's definitely
for episode 1, I've scoured it and I have found a car that I've always wanted.
Now, wait a minute, Mike. When you say things like I have found a car I've always wanted, I think that has come across about the last 17 times in the last 3 days when you've brought up a car to me. You've said, here's a car I've always wanted, dude. And I'm like, really? Is this the one you've always wanted? Wait a minute. Is this the one that you've always wanted? Or is it A1? You know,
I should rephrase
right now, right?
And say this is A1 that I've always wanted. Yeah. So I'll tell you guys.
And what do we got here?
If you're listening at home and you can't see it, we'll go through it. But if you're watching the podcast, there, you know, you can see it on there. Yeah. And the podcast is on YouTube, so you can find it there. I'm going to give you our producer, Mark Kastner, who's in the background right now. He'll put up a link on the website and where you guys can email us. But so the car that we're talking about right now is a beauty. It is a 1968 Cadillac El Dorado. Now,
is that the front wheel drive one?
Oh yeah. Oh, so they came out in 67, and 67 and 68 were the two purest years. In my opinion, 67 through 69 were the best classic car years for kind of like this muscular kind of stylistic. We were going, you know, just coming out of the jet age, going into the muscle car age. I mean, the Eldorado's front wheel drive, 472 cubic inch big block under the hood, closed out grille, hidden headlights, a swooping rear tail with these beautiful triangular lights in the back. It's big white walls.
Is this the kind of thing that makes like that? What'd you say it was, a 572?
This is a 472.
A 472. So you know that thing made, you know, 500 foot-pounds of torque, but 38 horsepower went to the rear wheels, went to the front wheels. Sorry,
went to the front wheels. Just to give you all an idea, so when I was back in the day when I was in school, we had a 72 Eldorado. Now in 72, it had a 501. Right, the styling had changed. It became. I want to say they ruined it. It was still a great looking car, but it wasn't as pure.
Right? Yeah,
it neutered it. That's the word. Thank you. But with the front wheel drive and all that torque, I remember at the time I was in New York and I was going through the Lincoln Tunnel in the rain, and I put my foot down and the car torque steered right into the toll booth and the front tire folded under because I had snapped the half shaft, and that was the end of that. But otherwise, these are amazing cars that if you've never driven, they are amazing highway cruisers. They're Luxo barges, super comfortable. Every amenity that you could ever want, from, climate control, power windows, power seat, rear defroster. No, they weren't fuel injected, but my God, did they drive good. This one happens to be Topaz Gold, which is just stunning.
Gold. You know what that reminds me of, Mike? There's one of my favorite drag cars. One of my favorite funny cars of all time was called the world's fastest Eldorado, built by a guy named Dave Zachary. It looks like this thing. Yep. I think it was a 67, but it, almost roughly the same body style and everything. And that's exactly what I would do to this thing if I had it. Ooh.
Oh, dude, they're so good. And like, if people that have watched my stuff and that know me, they know that I'm a massive fan of a grandpa car. And the bigger, the longer, the wider, I am just so into these things.
Yeah. So okay, I got a question, Mike.
I have an answer.
What happened when you stuffed that thing into the toll booth?
Tow truck.
Oh, okay.
Tow truck. Yeah. Right. Thankfully, if you ever go through the Lincoln Tunnel, the curbs next to the toll booth are about 27 feet high.
Yeah.
And so you have no risk of actually going into the toll booth. You just have a risk of like bouncing off a side. That's yeah. So yeah, but that you got to fix, continue to drive it. But that was when you're in college, that's a very expensive lesson to learn in the rain with a front wheel drive car with 500 cubic inches under the hood.
That's right. That's right.
But so now what I'm going to say is, because and then again, you're going to see us pull a classified every week. We're going to alternate. Next week, Dan, that's your turn. You're going to pull something. Right. So going to our illustrious producer, Mark Kastner, who's this guy who's in his 20s and he's got a beard and he wears glasses and he's got red hair.
He does.
He's just a stunning overall kid. Just amazing.
He's a beautiful man.
Beautiful man. Mark, what is our email address so that we could tell people? Okay. So
there it is.
At the end of this, if you have questions, if you have guests you'd like to see, if you have comments, if you have anything to say about the Hemmings Hot Rod BBQ, you need to email us at hotrodbarbecue@hemmings.com. Not only will we respond to your email, but we will take what you have to say in consideration for something, I guess. Right?
And when we say we're going to take into consideration what you have to say, what we mean by that is you're going to send us your barbecue recipes, your secret sauce ingredients, and your home address. That's all. Yeah. That's all I'm saying.
Right. And also, you know what? Let's add this. Because this is the first episode and we can pretty much say how we want this to go. How about, I'm just throwing this out there.
Yeah. Throw it.
How about if you do this, you throw out a picture of your car and why it's amazing, and we'll pick it. I can't answer all of them, but we will pick one every week to throw up on the barbecue. We're going to try to start this and we will talk about it. Right?
Ooh,
we'll say, this is you. You are this guy or this girl or this person that owns this individual car, and we'll give you a little shout out. How's that?
That's a great idea.
Just thought of it right now.
You just thought of that? Just
right off the top of my head.
So basically what you're saying, the Hot Rod BBQ is also filled with magic. Is that what you're saying?
Bringing people in.
I just feel the warmth all of a sudden just kind of surround me and envelop me.
This is what we do. This is what we do.
So good.
We are the purveyors of automotive warmth.
Oh, I can feel it. It's amazing.
So gentlemen, ladies, every individual out there who we love, who likes automobiles and motors and everything else, we're coming on about a half hour. This is a short show because it's our intro. The next show, I promise you, we will have some special guests going forward on each and every episode. So again, email us, go to Hemmings.com, read the articles, subscribe to the magazines because they really are actually really cool. And we will see you next week. Oh, and I guess we should say when this is airing, we're going to try to air every Tuesday, right? That might change, but for right now, it's every Tuesday morning. So you could go to look it up on Spotify and all your other favorite YouTube channels, hit the subscribe button, and we will be talking to you guys soon.
Wonderful. Wonderful, wonderful.